I think there are many, but for me, it's got to be, you have to be able to lead by example. Because actually you can't expect your team to do stuff if you're not willing to do it. I also think you really have to be solution-based orientated, as in you need to be able to come up with a solution rather than a problem. Because actually you need to be the person who's making everyone's lives easier. And then the other ones I think are probably sort of more common, but would be clear communication. So if you can't take your team on the vision that you've built for them, then actually you're not going to be a success, because no business can work with just one person. It has to be everyone working together. So for me, the clear communication is probably the most important out of all of those. I think you become, well, a bit more 24/7. And definitely when you look at things like Slack, the expectation that you need to be commenting on stuff, you need to be there, you need to be active, is very, very high. And I think more and more people, certainly in our team, expect that. But also I think it's a great way as a leader of being able to sort of get closer to your team, because actually you get to see what they're writing day to day, rather than just hidden emails that sometimes never see the light of day. For me, a leader needs to be someone who can orchestrate a team, because again, it's a team effort. It's not just an individual. So you have to be able to listen to your team. You have to be able to sort of like work on their strengths. So really identify who in your team is the sort of like the strongest at that and the strongest at that, and then use those to actually educate and help the rest of the business. So for me, it is being the conductor of an orchestra and being able to pull out the best bits of every person that works for your team. You constantly have to be more agile in the way that you think about things. Definitely with the adoption of digital, and it's nothing new, but the acceleration of the pace of adoption is increasing. And that's from our own internal teams, that's from our own partners, but also from sort of like the customer or the client. And so we need to constantly be keeping up to date with that and constantly iterate. I've worked with dev teams on multiple occasions, and their constant test and learn is something that we're having to do even in a sales environment or a marketing environment, because we have to work what's really working for that audience at that time, because their tastes change quite rapidly over time. I think it can, but you have to have an open mind to it. I've definitely worked with companies before where they've wanted to be agile, or they wanted to be flexible, or even disruptive, but actually it's something that is not something in their DNA, and actually it's difficult. Definitely imagine if you're a hardware company and you're trying to move into software or digital. Like, that's a big difference in how the business needs to perform and how it needs to operate. But I think, sort of back to your previous question about, is it something you can learn? Absolutely, I do. But I think it's something you have to be very open and very actively doing, because actually as a company and as myself, I'm always looking like, what are the opportunities? What can I learn from other companies? I suppose even as a leader, it's one of the attributes should also be like, how can I take from other companies, like take from other businesses or industries or categories about how they do things, and can I translate that into my company to actually find either another revenue stream or some other form of success. I'm not sure I think you don't need them in an established business, but what you find in the startup world is that actually you have to be much more, and I'll say it again, flexible but adaptable. Like, often you have someone doing 2 or 3 different roles, whereas if you're in a big organization, actually that person becomes a specialist within, let's say, campaign delivery or ad serving or programmatic or whatever it might be. But quite often we have people with multiple hats who are doing CFO role and also doing marketing, or someone who's doing sales as well as also campaign delivery. So people are ending up having to be much more, have 2 hats or 3 hats sometimes. And I think certainly that's not something that normally happens within bigger organizations, because they have more people who fill that need. Takumi is an influencer marketing platform that connects big brands with influencers. We're like 3.5 years old. Originally started in Iceland, based in the US, UK, and Germany. But for us, it's all about being a managed service. So taking the stress out of working with influencers. Because if you think that some of our bigger campaigns, we work with 150 influencers all at once. As a brand or as an agency, trying to do that would be quite time consuming, pretty stressful, because you have to vet them, making sure there's no influencer fraud. You then have to negotiate with them, you have to manage them, potentially send them product, and then also do all the reporting at the end. So for us, it's about just making it as stress-free as possible, but allowing those two to work together really, really well, but really creatively, and allow the influencer to really translate the brand into how they see it and be able to show that to their audience.